Hello. Hi everybody. I am back with another romance arc review. This one not in a wild sequence of like 20 of them. Very excited about that. Less excited about this book. I'm mostly just like, what? What? And I'm kind of upset about it because I have read books by this author in the past and I really enjoyed them. I'm just really confused by this one. So the book in question is called 10 Things That Never Happened by Alexis Hall. And this is a British LGBTQ romance and this is very important because Alexis Hall even has in the beginning of this, like, this uses this specific dialect. These words, these phrases, they're not mistakes or mess ups. This is a very specific British dialect. So it's not overbearing, but I will say right up front, it warns you if you do not like books that use a little bit of dialect in them for whatever reason, you've been warned. So this book is the story of Sam, who is a manager of a basically like bath and bedroom fixture store, kind of thing like Bed Bath & Beyond, but called Splashes and Snuggles in British. And he is a manager of a store that is failing. He is constantly being taken to task by his boss, Jonathan Forrest. Jonathan Forrest is a quintessential, uptight, numbers-driven corporate manager, and he is always telling Sam that he has to be a little bit more aggressive in his management style, whereas Sam is very invested in the lives of all of his staff members, even if that staff really is not that great at doing their jobs. But, you know, they've got a grandma to support, and he's very vested in that. So the story opens with Sam, again, being taken to task by Jonathan, who has gotten to the point where he's just like, listen, I may have to fire you, I may have to fire your staff, I have to make cuts, you're not meeting your margins, you're not meeting your numbers, and I just don't know like what to do. We've had these discussions so often, and Sam is like, ay, this guy is just really terrible. His entire store calls him his royal dickishness, which is heard by, unfortunately, Jonathan on the phone. And so Sam gets called to the flagship store where Jonathan works and also manages to come like observe Jonathan at work, but it's also a disciplinary hearing. During this meeting, you see how their personalities absolutely clash. Sam is very laid back, but he's also just like a fighter. He's constantly sassing Jonathan, and Jonathan is very rigid, very like, this is a job, this is a business, and just like cannot understand why Sam like isn't taking it as seriously as he is. And while they are out on the sales floor, they've already had a really contentious conversation in Jonathan's office. They're out wandering around. Sam realizes that Jonathan is really not a salesperson. He is not a people person. Sam actually has to save him a sale that he almost ruins. But then they get into a fight. And it's like a verbal altercation, but at a certain point, Sam trips into a shower unit that is on display and hits his head really hard. Jonathan is left to take Sam to the hospital. He's very worried that Sam is going to sue him. And after there's like a treatment and Sam is kind of coming back into consciousness, the nurse and Jonathan walk in, and there is a concern about amnesia. And Sam, being Sam, makes a joke. And he says, "Who are you?" to Jonathan. And this immediately sets off Jonathan and the nurse, who are like, oh my God, he's got amnesia. What do we do? And really in their flurry of like trying to take care of him, tell him what's going on, he is really unable to say, no, I don't have amnesia. I was just joking, because it all kind of just snowballs away from him. The long story short is that since Sam has nowhere to go, he ends up at Jonathan's house because Jonathan is A, worried that Sam is going to sue him, and B, feels a little bit responsible because it's kind of his fault, and 3, he doesn't know what to do when Sam remembers that what happened right before he fell into the shower is that Jonathan fired him. The story gets far more complicated from there. While Sam is living at Jonathan's house, there's a whole thing with his family about having Christmas at Jonathan's house, and because Jonathan has become so business focused, he's really become estranged from his family, and Sam is basically just walked into this very awkward situation where he feels kind of obligated to help Jonathan kind of mend fences with his family. So I don't know if I just missed this or it just wasn't really resonating with me, but this is a Christmas romance novel, not adjacent like my last Beth O'Leary review. This is a Christmas novel about like family and love and the meaning of Christmas, even if it's not like really up in your face. But yeah, I'm just not a fan. I'm sorry. The bigger issue is this, and this, I read this book. I know what I did. The fake amnesia thing, that's on the back of the book in bold letters. You cannot miss it. So I knew that that was going to be a trope when I started reading this book. I was hopeful that since the amnesia was fake, it would feel a little bit less awkward, because I have read books where the amnesia is very real and it's really hard not to feel like that character is being taken advantage of in some way. In the end, what ended up happening is I felt like Jonathan was being taken advantage of a little bit, because he was genuinely concerned for Sam, and Sam is faking this amnesia, right? Because he thinks that if he can make Jonathan like him, then he'll save his own job and the job of the people at his store. So that felt a little icky, and I also hope that since it was fake, it might resolve faster than maybe like a real amnesia plot or something like that. It didn't. It's a thing for most of the book. So if you, like me, cannot handle like withholding information, this is not a great book, because you have to sit this entire time with the knowledge that Sam is lying to Jonathan and then lying to Jonathan's family about his amnesia. It's a whole thing. Ugh, not great. The book is also a single POV, which I think is like fairly typical of Alexis Hall's books, or at least I've not read anything of theirs that has two POVs, but it's all from Sam's perspective. And I have a weird relationship with Sam in the beginning. Like, I understand how the fake amnesia situation kind of gets away from him. It's not something he means to cause. His continued lying is definitely on him, but it's also an issue where in the beginning, all you can really see is why Sam doesn't like Jonathan. And as someone who has worked under a very numbers-driven corporate manager, I have to be honest that I was pretty hardwired not to like Jonathan either. And even as you start to see Jonathan like interacting with his family, he doesn't necessarily like treat them very well. And it did take me a really, really long time to warm up to the idea that Sam and Jonathan were going to get together and like want that to happen, because for a while I was not convinced that either of them was like a really totally great person. And I understand that this book is the story of Sam coming to realize that Jonathan is not as bad as he realizes, but it's hard when you as the reader have so little to hold on to be like, I get that he's like, this looks like a terrible person, but inside he's ooey gooey. And that's normally what like a second POV can do for you, is to explain some of that behavior that from the outside looks so awful. I think a further issue for me is with this whole plot line of Sam trying to mend Jonathan's family in time for Christmas and their family relationship. And I cannot tell you what happens because it is saved for the very, very end of the book. You get a sense very early on that Sam is very alone in the world. You just don't know why. And that's why he ends up at Jonathan's. He genuinely has like really nowhere to go. And so that's part of the plot from the beginning, so that's not a spoiler. But I wish that certain things about Sam's life were revealed a little earlier, because it would make Sam's investment in Jonathan and Jonathan's relationship with his family make a lot more sense, and potentially have given Sam's determination to see this situation through have a little bit more heart, rather than him being like, I'm gonna keep faking amnesia so I can like save my store. There was a deeper meaning to that we don't really see until the end, and personally, I thought that that was very unfortunate, and it also felt like something that had been hidden from us, even though Sam had been our narrator this entire time, and I did find that incredibly frustrating. So if you've gotten to this point in the review, you might be, okay, you have all of these like frustrated feelings, but you read the whole book, so why? That is a valid question. The answer is that this book is hilariously funny. Like, I felt at certain points like it might have even been like overwritten. Like, Sam is so sassy at a certain point, he just feels like the main character of a young adult novel. But the way that first Sam and the things that he says are hilarious. Every single employee at Sam's store, even though for a lot of the book they're quite off camera or Sam is only communicating with them over the phone, each have their own distinct personalities, which is so funny. And if you've ever managed a staff of people, I feel like you just like get what Sam has to deal with like immediately. That was great. Also, Jonathan's family, there is a big number of them. It's quite an extended family: mom, dad, sister, aunts, uncles, grandparents. And you would think at a certain point that that would kind of get overbearing, especially the way that they act. Because at a certain point you're like, oh yeah, I really get why Jonathan does not want these people in his house. They are so much. But at the same time, they too also retain very individual personalities that are hysterical, the way that they interact. And really, I feel like if you are a member of like one of those just big, aggressively loud families, or you've even just seen one on TV, it's just a feeling of like, yeah, this is what this feels like, just in your face all the time. And I was just like laughing. You know, my fiance came out and checked on me a couple of times. He was like, wow, this book is really making you laugh. And I was like, it's just ridiculous. I don't even know sometimes why I'm laughing. I just like can't believe that this conversation is taking place on the page. And so even while I was frustrated with Sam and Jonathan as characters, I feel like the collective family, whether it's Sam's family from the store or Jonathan's actual family, come together to like buck them up and just be like, we get that they're kind of not great people to each other right now, but we're hilarious and we invite you to stay for us. And I was like, I mean, I accept. I'll stay. The fact that the middle of the book was so amusing to me definitely did encourage me very strongly to stick around for the ending and watch how this plot line was going to be resolved. Obviously, it was going to involve Jonathan finally finding out, and I just knew that that scene was going to be terrible, and it was. It was even worse than I thought it was going to be, actually. I think the issue is that while the book does acknowledge multiple times that this has been a huge breaking of trust, the ending wraps up like this. So had the book taken the time to deal with the breaking of trust that it acknowledges multiple times happened between these characters, and it acknowledges multiple times has to be healed before these characters can, you know, have a firmer foundation for the relationship that they're starting, it just kind of like willy-nillys it away right into the epilogue. And I was like, why is this like this? Why? You literally acknowledged multiple times that this is like a big deal, and then we don't get to see them deal with it. And that felt extra frustrating. So it did not have a great premise for me. I was really hopeful due to the middle that it would at least resolve well. I didn't think that it did. So it's really weird. I genuinely enjoyed reading a large portion of this book. I just don't know who I would recommend it to because of the problems I have with the overarching plot and our characters at the center. Like I said, I've read other books from Alexis Hall and I've really enjoyed them. So maybe this is just an off book for me. I would definitely still recommend their work if you want to pick up other titles. I just don't think that this particular title would be a big recommendation for me unless you are looking for a very British and very funny romance set around Christmas, which I understand is a very specific set of things that actually may float your boat. I just, at the end of the day, the interpersonal stuff just didn't work for me, and in a romance novel, that's kind of a big deal. Okay, I've gone on long enough about this. You can make your own decisions. This is an ARC review, and I am releasing this review a little early just because I have a couple of ARCs that are all coming out on the same day I'm trying to get out reviews for. So this book, if you're watching it the day I issue this review, won't be out for about another week, but you can look for it at your local library to place on hold or at your local bookstore, however it is, and read it yourself, form your own opinions, and come back and let me know what you think. I'll see you then. Thanks, guys. Bye.